You came back.
I did. It was on my calendar.
And we're
matching again. We wear the same colors every time.
But it's kind of different.
Granted, we only have like 3 colors that we actually wear.
I know.
Yeah.
I feel like when we left New York City, it's like black adjacent things like gray and dark, deep greens. And that's it.
I tried blue once.
How did it go?
Next question.
Welcome back, you guys. We are doing another round of burning questions. If you've been with us, you know that we are taking your burning questions throughout sermon series that we're doing, and we're collecting questions and answering the ones that we are getting repeatedly, and just kind of breaking apart the Sunday sermons a little bit more, going maybe a little bit deeper, or just answering questions that come up throughout these series. So this last series was about discipleship.
Yeah.
Be like Jesus. Do what Jesus did.
Become like Jesus.
Be a disciple, not just a Christian, a little Christ. Be a disciple, a follower.
Which I just learned about that phraseology. Be with Jesus, become like Jesus, do what Jesus did.
Yeah.
AJ at our church, AJ Svoboda and I, we co-host a podcast. I guess a little plug. Co-host a podcast for our denomination.
The same Jesus coming
Jesus
out
podcast.
Summer 2024.
Yep.
Season 2.
Season 2. And on it, we just interviewed John Mark Comer, whose book we just referenced.
Practicing the Way.
And I asked him, I was like, hey, I've told my church that be with Jesus, become like Jesus, do what Jesus did is Dallas Willard, but I can't find it directly attributed to him. Have I been ripping you off the whole time? And he said, yes. No. He said, he was very gracious. He was like, look, everything I say is pretty much ripped off from Dallas Willard. So the concept was from Willard, but that phrasing, be with Jesus, become like Jesus, do what Jesus did,
is his.
That's John Mark Comer.
That's his copyright.
So I would like to not be sued for not citing my source. So I just want to make that public
and
statement.
also now that he's a friend, it's a great book.
Absolutely. It's a great book.
So yeah, plug in that.
Yeah.
Well, we have some questions that we're going to kind of like rapid fire go through in light of the series on discipleship.
Great.
Which is a fantastic series. If you missed it, go back to our YouTube page. All of the sermons are there in it. And then come back here and maybe we're going to answer some of the questions that came up for you.
Great.
So, all right, question number 1. You ready? Okay. Can you guys talk more about what it practically looks like to abide in Jesus for busy and tired people?
Yeah.
Do you know anything what is to be busy?
I do not. No.
Or tired?
No, neither of those things.
You wake up like a daisy.
Yeah.
Refreshed.
Without the sound of children falling off countertops and ripping bookshelves out of their walls. Moving on.
Yeah.
I would say, so practically, what does it mean to abide? A reminder, abide means to actively rest. It's where we get our noun abode, right? So one's abode is where one dwells. So when we're abiding, we are actively resting in our environment, right? We're being rejuvenated or regenerated. I would say 2 things about practically how to assess this if you're busy and tired. Number 1, we're all abiding in something. We all have an abode. So it's not a question of I either abide in Jesus or I'm not abiding in anything. You are abiding in something.
You are going to something for your rest.
You're going to something for your rest.
Probably not actively restful, though.
Probably
right?
not. Exactly. And I think
passively restful.
Yeah. Maybe. Like a lot of our technologies we aren't actively engaged.
Right.
So I would say the first thing, and this might sound super dumb, for a couple days, keep a log of how you spend your time. You might be uncomfortably shocked by it. Like I wake up at this time and then I spend this amount of time doing X, Y, or Z. And then I'm at work this amount of time. And then I'm home and I'm doing this and then I'm going to bed. And how often is your phone beside you?
I was going to say, I think our iPhones can do that for us with the active screen time. Has anybody ever opened up screen time and been
shocked.
Appalled?
You're like, there's no way I spent 7 hours on Wordle. There's no way.
There's only one a day. How are you spending that much time?
There's no way. Exactly. So I would say practically just keep an keep a log of where your time is going.
Yeah.
And the second thing is if you're abiding in something and it might be more passive resting and it's not restful and you want to practically abide in Jesus, it's not going to be easy. You're going to have to be intentional.
Yeah.
So the practical advice here is like, you're going to have to intentionally make it happen.
Yes. It
doesn't just happen. And we do it. We're joke, but we have 2 young kids, multiple jobs. Like there's plenty of things that is always vying for our time and our attention. We have to be deeply intentional to carve out space and time to go and be in the presence of Jesus.
So practically speaking, a lot of the times we schedule during the week times that we are praying and worship with each other. We have to schedule our own quiet time with the Lord. And a lot of times it has to be like tag teams because like you said, we do have 2 kids and you can't really wake up at 3 a.m. before our children to do this. And so
we're not strong enough.
We're not strong enough for that. So we have to plan that. I know for me, I often have to set a timer on my phone to actively like stop in the middle of my day because I'll get too busy and I just keep going. And I realize like I book in my days with Jesus, but I don't stop to say like, Lord, I take you everywhere
and
with
like,
me.
But even what you're just saying in all of these, which is, you know, really good. Like we schedule it out. We literally put it in our calendars. Like we can't just think, oh, it's going to happen.
We're going to stop. Actively.
It's that
resting.
Active. Yes, exactly.
Okay. The followers of Jesus were able to abide with a physical Jesus, but today we can't physically see or hear Jesus. How then do we engage in relationship or be with Jesus, as you say, in the same way?
Yeah, I mean, so many ways. A lot of them we already do in the church. They're written up in the scriptures. I mean, one, his words. He says, if my words remain in you, then I will remain in you. You'll remain in me. So actively, undistracted, time with the Word of God, to read it slowly, to let the Bible read you. That's abiding with the presence of Jesus. Worship. I mean, by worship, I mean song, like singing. There's all sorts of examples, both within the scripture and in church history, about how when we sing with our whole bodies to the Lord, to Jesus, there is an encounter that takes place. Community. Community is abiding with Jesus in Jesus' name, I should say, like not just community.
Not just hanging out at the bar.
Right. But like people who come together to pray together, to listen to one another, to support, to pray over each other, to eat. That's abiding with Jesus, serving one another. Like there's so many ways. But I'd say if you're looking for some practical ways with the recognition that like the physical Jesus isn't here right now. It is making, and this is, you know, the Spirit of God is personal, is alive. So I have a spirit. My spirit animates my body, right? Like my spirit doesn't have any control outside of my body. But like you can see my spirit based on like how my body functions. The Spirit of Jesus is now no longer localized to one body, one physical body, but is now in his church, which is his body. So when we are together in his name, but there's still just the same type of spirit as I have in my body. So it's not true to say just because he's not physically here, therefore we can't abide with him. That's not true in the slightest. We can, because we're abiding. When you abide with me, yes, you're abiding with me physically, but you're abiding with my spirit so much too. We can abide with the Spirit of Jesus, the resurrected Spirit of Jesus as well, in all sorts of ways. But it does take intentionality. It takes actively resting, stopping, pausing. It takes entering in with our full bodies. It takes not being distracted. All of those are ways that we can actually encounter a living spirit. Anything come to mind for you?
No, I think that's great.
Great. All right. Check. Nailed it.
Done. What are some things that can throw us off the path of our discipleship? How much time do you have?
Yeah, seriously. Like, that's the question right there?
Yeah.
Well, you go first.
Okay. Gosh, I think the thing that comes to mind definitely is just a busyness. I think because I think even you think you're practically doing so many of the things for Jesus, but a lot of that is doing for Jesus rather than being with Jesus. And after this last series that we just went through, we realized how important it is to first be with Jesus before we do. Our doing for Jesus has to come out of a being, because if we start doing the things, it's a very surface level understanding of what it means to practically be a disciple of Jesus. It has to first come out of that. And I think the easiest way for the enemy to come in is to only slightly distort. I think some of the more obvious things that lead us away from discipleship are easy, right? Some of the like sins of the flesh maybe or the obvious things. But I think the most cunning way that the enemy does it is through hurriedness and busyness, and even for good things,
right?
You know, for holy or godly things, but things that aren't actually giving you space to first be a child of God before you're a leader, before you're a pastor, before you're a ministry leader doing all of the things. You get so hurried. So it creates,
you like almost distorts your identity. You get your identity off track.
Totally.
So then you try to like be a disciple of Jesus, but if you're not first, or you try to be other things for Jesus, if you're not first a disciple, a student, a learner of Jesus, then you're going to end up in weird places.
Yeah. What would you say for
I really
things
like that
throw us off our path?
Those, what you just named, when our fundamental identity as son or daughter or student, disciple is replaced by something else. I'm a pastor, I'm a mother, a father first, I'm a, whatever it is, I'm a executive first, we're going to end up in weird places. And I certainly think in the Western world, when we're just moving so fast and we have so much stuff, that when we're harried, when we're rushed, when we're not able to be still, be attuned to the presence of God, we're going to end up in weird places. And then maybe like the last thing I would say for those of us in Western contexts is our affluence. I think I constantly think of that when Jesus tells the story of the sower who sows the seed and where it lands, and the one that lands among the thorns. And it says it starts to grow, but then the thorns grow around it. And he says the thorns are our wealth, and it chokes the life of the fruit that could be born. And I think there's just something like we just need to name it. Like we have so many opportunities. We have so much stuff. We have so many devices. We have so many excursions. We have so many teams, and none of them are in and of themselves bad.
Right.
That's the thing. Like they're not bad. Like it's still growing. The fruit's still growing. Right. It's just being choked. Like there could be more life. And so this is not a call to sell everything. Like it's not, but it is a call to be aware of the relationship between our discipleship and our affluence and our wealth and our things that we have, because they are in relationship, and the wealth does not help. Maybe that's what we should say strongly. Wealth does not aid our discipleship. Wealth hinders our discipleship if we're not aware of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. What would you say to somebody who feels like they've hit a rut and their transformation through discipleship?
I'd say praise God. You're on the right path.
Explain more.
I mean, when you look at like transformational change, there's a concept, and I'm blanking on who the sociologist and who presented this, but Pete Scazzaro talks about it, the wall. When you hit the wall, that's actually, there's like 6 levels, and you encounter God, you grow, and at a certain point, every follower of Jesus will hit a wall, will enter a dark night of the soul, will hit a rut, and it'll feel like you're going backwards. It feels like nothing's happening. It feels like you're in darkness. That's actually part of growth. There's something deeply refining. All the church fathers and mothers talk about this, like when the light of God feels like darkness. There's something so deeply transformational happening when God has eliminated all traces of his existence. It feels like you're so aware of your grunge and your brokenness and your sinfulness. If you hold fast and don't let go and don't condemn yourself and remain true to the rhythms and the path that Jesus has called you into, the sun will come out again. And you will emerge even more refined and strengthened than before. So if you feel like you've hit a rut and it's not, check and be like, am I living, like in your conscience, am I living consistently in the will of God?
Yeah.
Like, do I feel like he's trying to convict me of something where I've strayed outside of his will and he wants to bring it to me and I need to repent of it? Like that's one thing. But if you feel like, I know I'm broken, but I'm living in the grace of Jesus. I'm really trying to serve him. My life is available to him, and there's still a rut, there's silence. Dude, you're in the right place. You're moving in the right direction. It doesn't make it easier.
Yeah.
But that's part of the journey.
Cool. All right. Somebody says, I pray, I worship, I even started practicing silence, and I feel really attuned to the Lord. But as soon as I leave those spaces, I feel irritable and I feel stressed and anxious and distant. What am I doing wrong?
Again, I feel like that's the last question. You're doing everything right. I mean, how would you answer that?
Well, I think back to like AJ's sermon, right? When he was talking about the coffee shop, and getting the coffee spilled all over the women. And he's like, that you're a disciple of Jesus when how you act in those, those spaces. This is a lifelong learning process of discipleship, right? Like we continue to go to Jesus, and transformation takes time. Yeah. It's not this like magic trick or, this vending machine that it's like, I pray and thus like it is a constantly being renewed in our minds, our bodies, a purification that's going to go through seasons. And I can't remember who said it, but it's like, also kind of going into the layers of who we are and allowing God to like excavate like these, as soon as you kind of like get to a layer, you realize that there's another layer underneath that the Lord needs to get into and purify. And, maybe some anger that's down there that's like, I'm an angry person, but I love Jesus and I do all these things. It's like, maybe there's a layer there that I haven't actually surrendered to the Lord. Right. But that, decades long, lifetime long. Yeah. And so I would, I would just say like, if you are practicing the things, that's why they call it a practice. You practice it. You keep doing it over and over again, and there will be change. Yeah. I think the other thing too is that I think for me in seasons, I've like kind of compartmentalized, like I do these things and it like bookends my day. Like maybe I pray and, worship in the morning, and then I don't talk to Jesus throughout the day. And then at the end of my day, it's like, thank you for the, instead of realizing like, bringing him with me, praying in the car to the place. If I'm going into a meeting, I'm like actively saying like, Lord, go before me into this meeting, prepare me, be in my heart.
Recognizing his spirit's there. Because again,
get dropped off at my door or like stay in my home as I walk out, like he walks before me. And so being really mindful of that kind of almost prepares me for the chaos of the day or the things that might come. Yeah. Do you have anything what would you say?
No, I like your answer.
Next one?
Yeah.
Let's go. How are you supposed to love really difficult people? Like people that make you angry, frustrated, or even enraged. And they say, and not the strangers.
I actually have a lot of practice in this one. So, hi.
Who are you talking about?
What?
People that are close to you, though, which I do think is harder, right? Yeah. Like the people that are difficult, that are strangers, you don't have to spend so much time with them. But what if they're your family or your friends or your neighbors?
One thing that comes to mind immediately in light of a previous question is, how do we get off track in our discipleship is we forget our fundamental identity, right? We are son and daughter. We are forgiven. We are Jesus's beloved. I think one of the ways that we love difficult people is we remember their identity too. They are son and daughter. Jesus came for them. And we speak that identity over them. We speak that identity in our own hearts over them. So that allows us to see them as Jesus does. It sort of welcomes Jesus' spirit to inform our vision of them, which really helps. I think human nature, confirmation bias, like we look for those examples that confirm what we already believe. Yeah. And the out-group, the group over there, the enemy, whatever they are, we usually look for the examples that keep them an enemy in our mind. So we create this monstrous caricature. Our social media certainly isn't making that better in terms of differing groups. But I think just recognizing like our human nature is to continue, especially for an enemy, someone who's really difficult to love, is to keep looking for those difficult things to love. It's not to actually draw them closer and seek reconciliation. Yeah. But the presence of Jesus seeks that. So I would say just see their identity. Like Jesus is that, like what Jesus says their identity is, just really letting him inform that. What else comes to mind for you?
I was going to say, I think that there's also a recognition through wisdom and discerning that there are certain people that perhaps are also leading you astray from the presence of the Lord, or like being in relationship is hindering your ability to walk with Jesus. And I'm going to use the word boundaries and limits. And that does not mean lack of love. And I'm not going to go into it too much because another plug, we're about to go into a series 5 weeks long on having healthy and whole relationships. It's going to talk about all about this.
Yeah.
But I would say that there are times too that sometimes loving somebody is having really healthy boundaries.
Without question.
And so that's the only thing that I would add onto what you
Yeah.
already said.
The idea that true love means you have no rules, which is what a boundary is. A boundary is a rule. That true love means you have no rules. It's just not true.
Right.
It's
And
one.
we don't see that in the life
It's
of
unhealthy.
Jesus.
But but it's just not true. Like every relationship, even if they say they don't have rules, that itself is a rule.
Sure.
That we're both free to do whatever we want.
Yeah.
But healthy relationships have boundaries.
Yeah.
They have rules.
Right.
That's not what brings the people into relationship. There's something deeper, a love, a covenant with one another, but it has boundaries. So boundaries are not antithetical to healthy relationship. They're actually part of developing healthy relationships.
And if you want to know more, tune in starting April 14th.
Da, 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 da.
Da, 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 da. Cool. Well, hey, this was fun.
This is fun.
We should do it again.
What color do you want to wear next time?
Ooh, let's try that blue.
Orange.
Yuck. It's
Or
not my
as
season.
our son will say, orange.
Unge.
Orange.
That's Simon.
Yeah.
He's two. He's the
Yeah.
best. We're gonna do this again.
Great. Let's do it again.
The next, I'll meet you there. Guys, the next sermon series that we are entering into is called
Never Walk Alone.
Cultivating Healthy and Whole Relationships.
Yeah.
We're going to dive into cultivating healthy and whole relationships. And so right now, you can actually start sending in questions before we even start the series. Email anna@faithcenter.org. What questions do you have about having healthy and whole relationships?
And we're not just talking about marriages, are we?
This is not a marriage series. No, let's put that out there. This is just relationship, which you have relationship with everybody in your life. That's the basis of relationships.
It's the basis of life.
That's the basis of life. We'll talk about that. So start sending them in because this will be a 5-part sermon series, but we'll start taking them now. Plus, if you give them to us now, maybe we can actually wedge them into the series.
Maybe, Anna.
Delightful. Cool. Well, thanks for answering the burning questions.
Yep.
Thank you guys for submitting.
We're still hot.
We're still hot
Burning questions.
from the burning questions.
Yeah.
We still got the dad jokes too. Woo!
10 years. 10 long, grueling years.
You love it. Okay. Check you next time.
All right.